car dealerships, a place of vultures. After stepping one foot into their domain, greasy salesmen stalk from the shadows, eyeballing you, wondering how much they can upsell you. It's a place that very few return from unscathed. It's a dark, decrepit place no man should ever have to experience, and woe betide the poor souls who do. Oh, yeah, Ready or Not, sorry. Just imagine everything I said, but then they also sell people in the back. Anyway, welcome to the Ready or Not lore series, where in today's episode we will be discussing the mission, Buy Cheap, Buy Twice. As always, this video will be divided up into two sections, the first being all in-game / developer confirmed information, and the second being my own theories as to where the story may go in the future. With a new resolve to finally crack down on mobsters operating in Los Sueños, the LSPD raids a suspected trafficking exchange point known as Caesar's Car Dealership and Repairs. Beginning in one of the garages, we can see that it appears to be business as usual. Car parts, tools, the usual thing you'll find in a place like this. Looking in the office, we can find a topographical map of what I believe to be Vietnam, as well as a calendar that says August 1971. I highly doubt that this is accurate, as we'll find a better date reference later on. Exiting the garage, we can find a tent with more anti-debanco signs and one anti-vet funding cut bill. Moving into the actual car lot of this dealership, we walk illuminated under the beautiful glow of string lights as we weave through discount cars. If we turn around, we can see a neon-lit sign advertising Caesar's Car Dealership and Repairs, and a very honest cable company that says, "Plaza Cable, we enjoy taking advantage of you." We can also find a small office with a backwards calendar and a flyer talking about the 9 rules, which we discussed last time. Instead of going into the dealership just yet, let's just trace around the outline. Swinging around to the left, we see a sign that says Ariadne Shipping Solutions Building 18 and Caesar's Repair Building 1A, with suspicious tire spikes blocking the entrance. Entering this loading area, we see more trash and junk just laying around as usual, as well as shipping crates with the text Trinity, Venus, and Celestine written on the side with some familiar cages nearby. Entering in through the side door, we begin to piece together what they were shipping. A makeshift structure with arrows painted on the ground directs us to an unloading bay that then takes us to a set of showers with some very out-of-place women's clothing nearby. Continuing to follow these arrows, we enter a holding facility with 12 makeshift bunks and the phrase, "You break it, you buy it," on the wall. Entering an office, we finally get confirmation of just what is happening here. These are the same human traffickers from the port. With a large map of Los Sueños on the wall, it becomes clear that this is a hub for trafficking. They enter through Port Hoken and are shipped to Caesar's to be quote-unquote processed, meaning cleaned up, pictures taken, locked away in these makeshift bunks before being sent off to some twisted monsters somewhere in Los Sueños. Around this map, we see 11 pictures of women recently shipped out. Out of all these pictures, 2 stand out the most. The first is this girl. Name, unknown, 23, Russian, code Venus, notice, malnourished, contract 1 year. This is the girl we found inside the shipping container at Port Hoken. It's really interesting that out of all the girls here, she's the only one listed as unknown. This makes me wonder if she's related to someone important, and this group kidnapped her in order to get back at them, marking her as unknown so she gets lost in the system. The other girl of note here is Jenna Palmer, age 20, United Kingdom, code Trinity, notice fractured right ulna, has a sister, contract 2 years. Now, what makes this interesting is at the bottom left of every girl sold, we see a customer signature. And what stands out about Miss Palmer here is that the customer signature is one of the legs of the spider, as you can see here. She is the only girl out of the 11 to have that very ominous signature, which is really interesting, but we'll dive into that later. Regardless, we now know that Trinity, Venus, and Celestine, and also Aurora, are codes used for each of these girls, but for the life of me, I cannot figure out what those codes mean. I cross-referenced each girl to see if there's any commonality between them, but nope. My guess is it has something to do with personality type, because the only common factor I found was between 2 Trinities and the fact that they are both resistant. Other than that, I'm at a total loss. But also completely unrelated, the other thing this whole poster situation confirms is that this map takes place in 2022 when you look at the ages and birth dates of the girls. Turning around on the table, we see an inventory listing even more girls with their ages, country, and values listed, with the youngest being 2 years old. After seeing that, I have a feeling Vol might have something to do with this operation. And speaking of Vol, we can find a reference to Daniela Vol not too far away. In this room, we can also find the pointy guy again and a large bag of money on the ground. There isn't really anything else in the holding area, and really the only thing of substance around the rest of the outskirts is on the taxis. When looking at the fare cost on the door, we see that going to the extremely dangerous part of Los Sueños, known as the Row, which was the location of Brixley Talent Time, it's an extra $5.50. And that's really it for the outside, so let's finally move into the dealership. Stepping in, it actually looks like a nice place. We can see they're doing a seasonal sale that's from January 1st through March 30th, meaning this map takes place somewhere between those dates in 2022. Also in fine print, it says, not available to persons recently incarcerated within the last 45 days. Expectations may be made. See manager for further details. Fuck! Nearby, we can find 2 certificates of appreciation for the ever-elusive Francisco Laguna, one we've seen before, and the other one is something new. Again, these are most likely placeholders, so one day they might say something different. Or not. Maybe, who knows? At this point, this is Schrodinger's Laguna. He's both in the game and isn't in the game, so before I lose what's left of my sanity, let's move on. In one of the offices, we see a projection of some cars and what sounds like Russian playing. I have no idea what they're saying, and no matter how hard I tried to translate it, I couldn't come up with anything of substance. So instead, I'm just going to play it here, and if any of you actually speak Russian, please leave the translation in the comments so I can pin it for everyone to read.
Козлятушки, ребятушки, отопритесь, отворитесь. Ваша мать пришла, молока принесла, бежит молоко по вымечку, из вымечка по копытечку, из копытечка в сырую землю. Козлята отворили двери, волк кинулся в избу и всех козлят съел. Только один козленочек сохранился в печке. Приходит коза, сколько ни звала, ни перечитывала, но никто и не отвечает. Видит, дверь отворена, бежала в избушку, там нет никого. Заглянула в печь и нашла одного козленочка. Как узнала коза о своей беде, как села она на лавку, начала горевать, горько-горько плакать. Ой, вы, дедушки мои, козлятушки, на что отпирались, отворялись, злому волку доставались. Услыхал это волк, входит в избушку и говорит козе: что ты на меня грешишь, кума? Я не твоих козлят съел, полно горевать, пойдем лучше в лес погуляем. Пошли они в лес, а в лесу была яма, а в яме костер горел. Коза и говорит волку: давай, волк, попробуем, кто перепрыгнет через яму. Стали они прыгать, коза прыгнула, и волк прыгнул, да и валился в горячую яму. Брюхо у него от огня лопнуло, козлята оттуда выскочили, все живые, да прыг к матери, и стали они жить-поживать по-прежнему.
Right around the corner from the office, we find a magazine on a couch that says, The Yemeni Crisis. War in Yemen becoming more likely as USAF continues surgical strikes. The terrorist faction known as The Hand that attacked the nightclub are from Yemen, and the incident detailed in this magazine is the reason why they shut up the nightclub in the first place, but we'll explore that in a later episode. Looking in the back offices of this place, we find it rather sparse. The occasional boxes, empty desks, the usual sort you'd imagine in a place like this. Back in the lobby, we find another magazine that says, The Great Outdoors, Sierra del Sueños Edition. Best day hike in the Sierra Madre Highlands, a 40-million-year-old mystery. There really isn't anything else in the first floor, and to be honest, there's not much on the second floor either. The only thing of note is a much larger list of their inventory. It's the same one as before, just bigger, next to a whiteboard listing the number of Trinities, Venusians, Celestines, and Auroras. And that is all I could find on this map, so let's just jump into the theory. So the biggest thing about this map is it really ties a lot of things together. When looking at the map we found in the office, flipping it and overlaying it on top of the map in the ready room, we see it lines up quite well with the locations we've been to. We can see that the girls come into Los Sueños from Port Hoken, are sent to Caesars, then are distributed to places all over Los Sueños like the meth house, post office, Brixley Talent Time, and the nightclub. This is big. First of all, it definitively confirms my suspicion of the port and meth house being linked, but it also makes total sense that Brixley is involved too. We saw in the ledger that they are smuggling kids into Los Sueños as young as 2 and 3, so they send them to Brixley, and Brixley sends them to Vol. What's really big though is the fact that the post office and nightclub are connected to this as well. The nightclub makes total sense in a fucked up way, but the post office is making me question a few things. So let's establish a tentative timeline. The ports and meth house raids take place sometime before raiding Gerard's house. All those maps potentially take place somewhere in early to mid 2021. The Mindjot raid takes place definitively in August of 21, with the Brixley raid taking place in February of 22, and the Vol raid on April 16th, 2022. The car dealership raid takes place somewhere between January and March of 2022, so potentially, while the LSPD were still trying to crack the encrypted data found at Mindjot, the LSPD raided the dealership and found new information that helped them expedite the process and definitively confirm Brixley as a person of interest. They launch the raid, they learn about Vol, then go after Vol. So I'm going to place the dealership raid in February of 2022 and assume information found after the port raid pointed them to Caesar's car dealership. I think the biggest takeaway here is the fact that things are far more connected than we previously thought. I assumed there were multiple factions just doing their own thing, yet this map basically confirms there's at least one faction playing with everyone. Los Locos, Vol, Brixley, probably Bolton Security, they're all connected to this Russian human trafficking ring. But despite all of that, we still know next to nothing about the Spider. Clearly, they play into this in some way. Jenna Palmer was bought by someone from the Spider, but why her and not her sister? What makes her unique? And why even buy her in the first place? I still feel like the Spider is continuing old USIA LSD experiments by contaminating the components Los Locos use to make their drugs. But I don't know why they'd want a sex slave. Maybe they're doing human experimentation too, buying people to test their products on them to see what happens firsthand. At this point, who knows? So many questions and so few answers. Yet, on the bright side, at least we have 2 new highly suspect locations to dive into.